My name's Liz. Welcome to our vlog. Our home ed looks like this vlog. And this is my October gardening collaboration. It's going to be slightly different this month because I've had a lot of requests to explain how we celebrate the harvest. So I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of it all, and I will introduce you to some of my herbs and my garden in a minute because we have recently moved. Now tonight I have been invited on a podcast to discuss Samhain and what Samhain means to me. So I'm going to incorporate a bit of that here too because it ties in with the requests I've been getting personally to put in our around the world vlog section and also our gardening section because it all ties in together quite nicely. We've just moved house, as many of you know, so my garden is very much a work in progress. We no longer have the allotment or anything because that's about 300 miles away, I guess. So that was just impractical. And our chickens are staying with friends. Thank you, Vicky. I really appreciate you looking after them for us until I can get a coop and everything sorted here, which I am working on, in all honesty. So I will take you outside in a minute and introduce you to all my herbs. But I wanted to discuss October with you and Samhain as well. So, Samhain is one of the 4 quarter festivals, widely practiced now by modern day pagans, and it was celebrated in early Ireland. However, there's not much record on how it was celebrated because a lot of the accounts were actually written during that crossover period between Celtic paganism and Celtic Christianity. And a lot of the records were written by the Christians. So we don't actually know for sure how the Celtic pagans celebrated this time of year. Now we do know that they split the year into 2. We had the dark half and the light half. And we know the Samhain was the start of their dark half of the year. It was the start of their winter. And so we tend to tie that into our celebrations in many respects. Now, there's not much record in Scottish, Welsh and other Gaelic communities either about how they celebrated it. We do know that in Scotland it's referred to with more of a V sound, so more of a Samhain, whereas we call it Samhain. And the name itself is also widely debated. So many believe it says summer's end, Sam for summer, and Fuin for end. However, we also have the name SAMHAIN, and that was a Celtic word meaning gathering or assembly. And now we do actually have records of big assemblies taking place around the time of Samhain. So they would all gather together, they'd probably share stories about their travels over summer, any wars they'd had. So yeah, it all ties in quite nicely to this idea of gathering around this time of year, spending time together. Now, modern day pagans tend to take their cues from nature and the surrounding world. So obviously if you look outside, all the deciduous trees are still in that process of turning and dying. We've got all them lovely rich colours coming in. The world looks very beautiful at this time of year. It's stunningly beautiful, all them rich deep colours. In the 1800s, a fellow called John Rees gave a lecture on the origin and growth of religion. And in that he stated, because traditionally the pagans start their Samhain celebrations at sundown, he felt that that would have made sense with it being a festival, a New Year festival, the start of the year, because obviously it was the start of the dark half. So some of the herbs I'm going to introduce you to in my garden for Samhain specifically, I will show you all of them. It is a garden collaboration after all. Some of the herbs I'm going to introduce you to are rosemary, mugwort, let me see, elder, although I'm going to introduce you to the version of elder I've got. This is my back garden, and as you can see it's very much a work in progress as we're still moving in. It's just been the new moon and Samhain is really creeping up on us here, and this is my lovely mugwort. as you can see, I managed to save some of my herbs from the allotment. I really need to sort out my coriander, so I just haven't had time yet. I intend on getting lots of them in the ground at some point. Lavender, a little lemon balm, the bottom of my cherry blossom, my curry plant, here's my sage. I have some of my more speciality ones up here. So this is my lovely mugwort. I'm quite lucky really that it's grown back, because as you can see from these long stems, that's how tall it was initially. But they got damaged in the move and just ended up looking like little sprigs like that. But they have regenerated and bounced back to life with some loving TLC. Now mugwort is a herb that enhances dreaming. It's again linked to the wise crone and that triple goddess. It can also aid sleep through making dreams vivid. A wonderful woman's herb for deep connection and shadow work, which basically means focusing on deep trauma and inner struggles, knowing yourself truly, warts and all. It's also a herb of communication, and for those who do like to commune with their ancestors, mugwort is wonderful for this. It's also a really good menstrual herb for women, a hormone one, so great for those going through the menopause as well. So we like to make dream pillows this time of year as a family, the older ones obviously. And I like to drink it in a tea, especially on Samhain, because I think it's a really, really important part, an important plant that connects with that crone aspect of Samhain. So I absolutely love mugwort. Mugwort is also a digestive, a liver tonic, a sedative, and is great for smudging and cleansing the home. So this is my lovely little elder here. And it's the only one that survived the move, sadly. And elder is crucial medicine, especially this time of year. It's the mother tree, and it's linked to sacred knowledge and wisdom. Now, folklore has it that you always ask permission before taking, and I always do. Elder is the guardian of gateways, but medicinally, there's tons of studies on elder. It's a diuretic, antiviral, and it's got lots of hypoglycemic properties. It's an antibacterial. You can use most parts of the elder, because obviously you can have the berries. You've got the flowers in spring, which we'll make our cordials out of. And I've actually made some elderberry syrup for this year. It's such an important medicine for winter. And it's almost as if the land knows that. The land seems to give us what we need to get through each season. And now coming out the front of the house, you'll see my valerian on the left, doing wonderful as well. And a very protective herb that I also work with this time of year. Because again, it's a good herb for connection to the self. It relaxes the mind. It's got loads of healing and medicinal properties. And then we've got our lovely rosemary, which is the one I wanted to come and talk to you about. This is a herb of remembrance, of honouring and protection. It's really, really good mental health herb as well. You can drink it as a tea. I've just taken a entire sprig, put it in water and drink it that way. It's very protective, so I have one either side of my front door. I can just show you the other one there. Oh, my skeleton's falling down in the weather. Oh no. I'll have to rescue him. So it aids in sleeping as well. It's antibacterial, antiviral and antifungal. So it's another herb that's good for this time of year in that respect. But it does have a deep connection to the ancestors, because again, like I said before, it's that communication herb, and it's a herb for the memory. Remembering the dead is obviously very important this time of year, which is why this plant ties in beautifully, as well as its protective elements. My calendula is still going strong there, though some are not very happy, but it's that time of year, isn't it, really? This is my children's little Halloween graveyard that they've done. And this is our front garden. I've not really done anything here, to be honest with you. I've not really had a chance to yet. My comfrey is bouncing back from the move. It looked completely dead when we got here. kind of like my chamomile still looks. But yeah, I'm going to have to get out into the garden soon, but I've been busy unpacking the house. So rosemary is a herb of remembrance and honouring. It's very attached to cognitive function in that respect. It's a good mental health herb as well because it helps with clarity. So it's a protective herb too. It's perfect for this time of year because obviously as it enhances the memory, and we're trying to remember our dead this time of year, trying to honour them. Oh, actually, you can see my elderberry syrup just there in the black bottles in the background. I made it all earlier this year. So back to rosemary. It's an antibacterial, antiviral and antifungal. So again, great for this time of year when everything's getting damper, wetter, and people are getting more sick. So for those of you that suffer from, say, SAD, seasonal aided disorder, this is also a great herb because of the antidepressant qualities it actually has. It really picks up that mood, and it can help you. It's safe enough to take long term. Obviously, it's not advisable for women who are pregnant to take rosemary right the way through. You can have little bits in food, that doesn't affect you or anything like that, but you do have to be careful. So please do look into your own medical histories, because I am only training at the minute. I'm currently doing my BSc in clinical herbalism, and obviously until I'm qualified I can't really advise people, and without taking a full medical history I can't actually freely give that advice out. However, I can tell you its general uses and its general purposes and what I use it for personally for me and my family. So please do look into any contraindications of the herbs that I'm going to go through today, because it's very important that you do that for yourself, because each of us are different. And then we've got the elder. And the elder is crucial medicine. She's the mother tree. She provides sacred knowledge, sacred wisdom. And you must always, and legend has it that you must always ask elder before taking any part of it. You need a permission. She's the guardian of gateways, so again, a wonderful plant for this time of year when we're trying to commune with our ancestors and honour them. Medicinally, it's a diuretic, antiviral, it's got hypoglycemic properties, it's antibacterial, and there's loads and loads of studies out there now on elder and the benefits of elder for our health. So I do suggest you look into them studies yourself, because it's quite impressive, especially the flu season. And like I said, that's my elderberry syrup behind me in the black bottles there. And I made that a couple of weeks ago. I went out, foraged the berries, came back, processed them and made our syrup. And that is it's such amazing medicine for the winter season, them cold, dark months as well. Especially when you've got children, because it's actually really good for children, so you can give it to your kids as well. And it really boosts the immune system and gives us that boost in mood too. It's such a wonderful plant for this time of year. So if you can go make yourself some elderberry syrup, I really do recommend it, because you will not regret it. I think it's something we should all have in our kitchen here, our home first aid kit really. And mugwort is a wonderful plant for this time of year. It's linked to dreaming, journeying, the wise crone and the triple goddess. It aids in sleep with vivid dreams, those to be warned. It's all about deep connection, that shadow work, which is perfect for this time of year. Really getting to know yourself and digging deep. Deep healing, releasing all that. I've mentioned communicating with the ancestors. You can also use it to smudge with. You can make dream pillows with it. You can have it as a tea. It's an amazing woman's herb. It's fantastic. The benefits this herb has for women is just amazing. It really helps with menstrual flow and all them menstruation symptoms that we get. It's great for women who are going through the menopause. It really supports women going through the menopause. It's a digestive, a liver tonic, a sedative, and it's just perfect for this time of year and the meaning of Samhain. It ties in really nicely. So this is one of my favourite herbs in my garden this month. So I was also asked to explain how turnips come into play, and as you can see, I've got my lovely turnips here. I hollowed them out, and then Tyler and her friend Megan actually carved them for me. So I'm very grateful, girls. Thank you. Because turnips are pretty hard to carve, but they are more traditional. because obviously they grew very easily in Ireland and in them colder climates. Whereas pumpkins grow very, well, they do grow easy here now, obviously, but traditionally we didn't have pumpkins available to us at that time of year. So there's a lot of folklore around this time of year that ties in nicely with Samhain and also with Halloween. We've got souling, which is a Christian folk tradition, and that would be where families and children and beggars even would go around, knock on people's doors, and they would give prayers and songs to the person's dead, and provide soul cakes in exchange for money. And it was a very important practice because they thought that they gave their dead the peace that they needed. And then you've got lighting, also known as lighting the witches. And this would be where local villagers would carry candles around the entire village, around all the fields, in the hope to ward off evil. If their candles stayed, they would light the candles at 11 p.m. and if they stayed lit to 12 p.m, that would mean that you were then safe for the coming year from evil witches. Which also ties in nicely with Teenlay Night. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that was also carried out on All Souls Day. And that was where people would light the bonfires to scare away witches as well. But obviously we don't want to scare away witches here. So we have traditions where we would clean and smudge, just to push that negativity out and bring in all that positive energy. And now obviously being a harvest festival, it's a time of reaping in them rewards and also planning ahead for the future and future goals that you're going to be wanting to bring into your life. So we do a lot of that here as a family. Now our family traditions include an ancestral dinner where we leave a place set, and that's in honour of our past relatives. We get the pictures up and on display, candles lit in honour of our ancestors, and we exchange them stories that really bring them back to life and keep them alive in our hearts and memories. So it's a beautiful time of year for recognising and honouring your ancestral line, and also your ancestral land spirits too, because people move about and obviously ancestors tend to stay where they've died and that energy is there, so you tap into that local energy too. So that's also very important for us to honour the actual land spirits where we're living. In addition to that, the veil is believed to be thinner. So we also want to embrace that aspect. So it's also a time of like lots of protection. I'll take a nice ritual cleansing bath of an evening with loads of candles again. And it's just very, very tranquil and relaxing. And that's very important to me because that also gets me ready for the next stage, which is where I will do a lot of herb craft, because I practice more of a hedge witchy type thing. So I'll make medicines and Samhain. I'll burn certain herbs which I feel are important for honouring my ancestral line and connecting with them energies. But we also bring in all the fun aspects for the children too. So we do all the general trick-or-treating, carving pumpkins as well. We go pumpkin picking. We have great fun with it with the children. We incorporate a lot of apples, so apple bobbing. And then obviously you've got the apples where you tie on a string, which my nan used to love doing. It really reminds me of her, so I always try and get that in somewhere if I can. Arms tied behind your back and trying to bite the apple off the string. And obviously apples are very tied into this festival because they're linked to the goddess, they're linked to all the elements with the pentacle inside them, depending on how you slice them. So we do a lot of things with apples as well, like baking a pie, and I'll put good intentions into that too. So I was also asked to explain turnips and why they're carved. Now there's a lot of ideas around this, why we carry on this practice to this day. Now the most common story that most of you will know is Jack, and he was a blacksmith. He was a bit of a cheeky character. He was heavy on the ale. And he was a bit of a gambler. And one night he starts gambling away and realises he's gambling against the devil. And again, this bit of folklore comes from that Christian Celtic paganism crossover as well, which is why the devil features heavily in the story. And now Jack, he's a bit of a character, do you know what I mean? He's always on the scam. So he decides to ask the devil and trick him into giving him an extra year. So the devil agrees, trots off. A year later, he returns. Now Jack's prepared for this. So he says to the devil, I'd like a bit of a drink first, would you? So he gets the devil drunk and then convinces the devil that he can't afford to pay the bar tab. So to magically turn himself into a coin that Jack can then pay the bartender with, and then afterwards the devil can materialise as himself and trot off. So the devil agrees, turns himself into a coin, and Jack quickly snatches him up and throws him in his pocket, where he's trapped because he's got a cross. So the devil can't escape. After some arguing and toing and froing, Jack gets the devil to agree to an extra 10 years before he returns for his soul. So again, the devil disappears for 10 years and comes back. And in that time, Jack's had time to put together another plan. So what does he do? He convinces the devil to climb a tree. I mean, the devil's pretty naive at this point, if you ask me. But up the tree he goes, and quickly Jack carves a cross into the tree, trapping the devil where he is. So now the devil's stuck in a tree, and obviously he doesn't want to stay up there forever. So after a bit more arguing, Jack gets the devil to agree that he will never take Jack's soul if Jack removes the carving and lets the devil out of the tree. So obviously the devil goes back home to where he resides, and Jack gets on with his life thinking he's very smart, very clever, and he's outwitted the devil. Anyway, Jack then dies of natural causes. And so he goes off up to heaven, and God says, well, you weren't a very nice man in life, and lists all his moralistic crimes, and sends Jack down to hell. So Jack gets to the devil's residence, and the devil's like, now I stick to all my agreements, and we made an agreement that I would never take your soul, so you can't come in here. You're going to have to wander the earth in your own purgatory alone for all of eternity. But the devil decides to be nice in this story, and he gets him a coal burning with hellfire, and Jack carves himself a lantern out of a roof edge he can see and puts it inside, and off he wanders with his lantern for all of eternity. So obviously that is a folklore tale and how it ties into modern day celebrations. However, when we look further back again, we also have the story of the Macha masts. Now, Macha is one of the goddesses in the triple goddess form of the Morrigan. In some stories she's a sister, in other stories she's not. However, the name Macha means field or plain in Old Irish. She was the goddess of sovereignty of the land and also of the self, agriculture, fertility. She was also a war goddess and the goddess of death. So she's very honoured in the Celtic traditions. She's also tied in with horses, corvids, the birds, or animal associations, and she's very linked to Ulster, one of the places in Ireland. So and her links with this time of year, I would say, are hawthorn, because she's very linked to hawthorn, mistletoe and holly for as the season progresses. So there are several Machas in Irish mythology. So 3 in particular. There's a place called Armagh, I think I'm pronouncing that right, known as Macha's Height, and that's a town in Ireland. And in the Book of Invasions, the town is actually named after the goddess Maka. But this Maka was the wife of Nemeton, and this is where the strong connection to land and agriculture comes in. And then you've got Navan Fort, and that's actually connected to all three Makas in the Irish legends and folklore. She was the wife of Cunich, and I've probably not pronounced that right. It's spelled Crunuic, I think. And that's the strong association with fertility. She was very associated with fertility, this Maka. And this is where the horse link comes in, because to save her husband's life, she had to race the king's horses, and she ended up winning. She was actually pregnant at the time, and later, after the races, gave birth to twins. When she died, legend has it that she cursed all the men of Ulster. So, sorry guys, nothing down for you. And then the final Maka is Maka the Red. She was the wife of Kimber and was reported to be the Queen of Ireland at some point. She was allegedly one of the best rulers Ireland ever had, and Navan Fort was apparently built in her honour. And this is the Maka that represents that sovereignty and sovereignty of self as well. In legend, Maka is one of the children of the goddess of Danu, and in some stories she is actually Dakk's granddaughter. She was said to have visited the fields of war in crow form and feast on the heads of the enemies of the men who had fallen there. And that's where we get our tale of Maka Mass from. So the Celts used to take the heads of their enemies, and they would take them home with them and keep them in a nice little separate cubby hole. I mean, I have one, don't you? Don't we all? And they would store their heads there, and that is because they believed that the soul resided in their heads, and that by taking the heads of their enemies, they would cause chaos and havoc amongst their enemies' tribes, because without that ancestral link, they would use that energy. So they'd take away the souls of their fallen warriors and send them all into disarray. And obviously they were called Maka Mass, and obviously the heads tie in with our carved pumpkin faces too. So there's lots of ways that you get that connection through in Samhain. Some stories are a bit more gory than others, I guess. But yeah, so that's the goddess Maka, and she is very, very related to the Samhain festival. So this has been a bit of an unusual garden collaboration, I guess, because I'm trying to tie in so many things into one vlog, I guess. I probably should have split it up a bit more. But I've introduced you to my new garden. We've gone through some of the folklore. We've gone through the history of Samhain. Well, what we know of it, should I say. We've covered some of the old legends. We've covered some of the goddesses associated with the season. And we've also covered some herbs with it. However, I do recommend heading over to my friend's podcast, The Weird Sisters. I was invited on last night to talk about all this stuff. So if this is something that interests you, you can pop over there. So yeah, it's the Weird Sisters podcast. And I'll pop a link in the description. And I was invited on there to talk about literally all this. The history of Samhain. The history of Samhain. How I practice, how my family practices. And everything like that ties into there really. And the other ladies all offered their own opinions and explained their traditions, what was important to them about this season of the year. And we also got into the whole oppression of women in the respect of the witch burnings and everything like that too. So it's quite an interesting conversation, to be honest with you. And I do think people will get a lot from it. So head on over there and check out The Weird Sisters.